Yo folks, welcome back. I want to show you a nice party trick for the weekend inside of Bitwig Studio. It's maybe also a testament of why Bitwig is great and what kind of things you can achieve in a very short time. It's not complicated here. I go into Bitwig, completely fresh project, and we're gonna load up here a test tone. And inside of the test tone we have different sounds we can choose from: sine, tri, square, saw, and so on. And now I just want to use here the Dirac signal. And this is usually used for creating impulse responses. It's a very short burst of sound where all the frequencies are kind of equal. Sounds like this. Right? It's very short, but it's very nice to excite filters. So let's say we have an EQ plus here. We can just take the signal and create some kind of very resonant frequencies here. Just some random stuff. And with this you can create percussions basically. But here the filter is kind of not, you have to dial in all the frequencies by hand. So we can just take the grid for this, and maybe I just put here a peak limiter on the master, just in case. So instead of using here the EQ plus and putting in some manual frequencies, we just take an FX grid. And here we can do the same thing. We don't have an EQ in here, but we can use, for instance, an XP filter, something like this, and then put this here on the default frequency, which is C3, and then crank up here the resonance, and we get kind of similar things. Let me put this up here. Maybe I have to make this here a bit louder. Or maybe we take here a peak. Maybe a bandpass. So you get the idea, right? So at the moment we just have one peaking frequency. So what I usually do is then I use a pitch, which gives us some kind of note. So here it's C3, and we just can feed this into the XP filter and crank up here this amount knob, and maybe pull this down because we don't want to influence this filter with the keyboard accidentally. So this one just brings the frequency then, if you have this here, the default frequency, this brings it up to C3, so to the frequency of C3. It should sound already different. Yeah, it brings it to the frequency. And then we can do like voice stacking here. So we do 3 voice stacks, and we then maybe use the stack modulator, or maybe we use, let's say, a dice and a trigger. And we basically have this already 3 times now because we have your voice stacking on 3. And then we can press trigger here, and we have in all 3 layers, we have a different random number here from 0 to 1. So we use a modulator here, and we modulate the pitch, maybe by, let's say, 12 semitones or 24 semitones, 2 octaves basically, around that. It's not important. So we hit this, and now we have 3 frequencies peaking. So every time we press trigger, we get a random, 3 random frequencies, more or less. We can increase this here, of course, to 6 frequencies. So what we can do then is we can hook up a pitch quantize here after the pitch knob, because we kind of modulate this here in a random way, right? We press dice, we get a random value, and then we modulate this here by random amounts. And we want to have all these frequencies inside of a scale. So here it's D sharp minor. So this sounds more musical in a way. So it's still a bit boring. And the idea here is, instead of pressing actually trigger manually, I want to trigger this with an audio signal, right? So we can do this inside of the grid. Maybe I zoom out here a bit more. We can do this with an envelope follower. So we follow the audio signal. Maybe the rise time goes down, maybe this goes up, something like this. You can already see we have multiple voices here. So this is basically on all of these layers, on 6 layers at the same time. So with this, we go then into, let's say, a delay. We take the same signal, delay it by a few milliseconds, maybe 30 milliseconds, and we just subtract the follower signal from the delayed signal and use a seal which just brings up all the values, rounds up to the next upper integer, which is 1 then, which gives us some kind of trigger. So let's use an oscilloscope here maybe. Put this here. And let's use here the follower signal. So we should get a trigger from this. Maybe use a different color here, maybe all voices. Yeah, you can see it barely there, down. This is basically the trigger we get, or the audio signal we analyze. It's very short burst of audio. But we can extract a trigger from that pretty easily. Maybe make this a bit shorter, yeah. So with this then, we can trigger, instead of triggering this manually here, so we can just remove this. Whoops. We trigger the dice, we get a random value on each of these layers, and then we randomly change the pitch. So every time we get now an audio signal in, we detect the trigger, we randomize the pitch for the filter. So this is kind of already pretty dope in my opinion, because you get random sounds or random melodies or different random peaking frequencies. But we can take this a bit further. Maybe make here this a bit more orderly. So I say, do we have a label here? So we can say this is transient detection. This is frequency randomization. This modulates this here. This is pitch quantization. I actually don't need to label this. And then we just take the audio signal and resonate here with this filter at this position. Okay, so that's not all. We can take this further. So another problem is that the test tone here has a certain frequency, and this is of course not aligning with the transport BPM, right? So here the thing is already on. So you can hear the metronome in the background. Right, so it's not matching the BPM of the track. So we can do something goofy. We can implement some kind of live audio quantization, and we do this by using a recorder, and we record the audio signal, right? We record the incoming audio signal, but only when we receive a trigger. So the transient detection here gives us a trigger because it detects, oh, there's an audio signal peak coming in. And then we say to the recorder, let's record this. And we want to record this for a longer period of time. So we use a gate length here. Maybe let's say, I don't know, 100 milliseconds or something like this. It depends what kind of signals you want to record, because remember, we just detect the first transient of the sound, but the sound also has some kind of tail, some ringing out, right? And we also want to record this, so this basically decides how much of the tail you want to record. So this should already work. And then we take the output of this and go into the filter, but the playback here is now something we want to quantize or kind of synchronize. So we can use a trigger here, or triggers module, which sends out 4 triggers for each bar. So we can do this. Maybe this is too long here, I don't know. So we can kind of delay the signal. But what I want to do is I want to use this here more like a clock. So I have 16 triggers for each bar, which is 16 notes. And then I use a clock quantizer here, and I use this as a clock. So then we use the trigger signal here coming from the transient detection also to trigger basically here the recorder. But we delay the signal until the next 16 note is appearing. So we kind of quantize the audio in a way. So this is the original input signal here, our still Dirac signal going into the FX grid. It's pitch quantized, it's timing quantized or rhythmically quantized, and we have random resonating frequencies inside of a scale. With the filter we can also change the filter, of course, to something else. Yeah, maybe the peak is not the best for this. So now there's also something uninteresting, because all the triggers happen at the same time. So we could technically just delay the triggering on each layer kind of differently. So maybe use a long delay here. Let's put this in here. This is 4th note, this is 8th note, this is 16th note. So this doesn't work because we don't record in the right time. Maybe do this. Yeah, and then we use maybe a stack spread here. So each voice gets then a different delay time. Bit of reverb, and delay. Right, and you can play around with this in all kinds of different ways. Maybe you can increase here the modulation strength for the pitch. And remember, there's no sound creation or sound source in here. It's all coming from the small little Dirac signal. And when you slow this down, you get interesting rhythmic effects because it tries to quantize this to a 16-note grid here, and you maybe get some uneven clicks. And it's kind of synchronized here to the grid, or to the BPM grid. You can also maybe switch this to a saw. Let's try this. Maybe an EQ before that. So I want to show you this here, how easy it is actually in the grid if you know your way around the grid. You can do transient detection, trigger some dice with that, get some random values, modulate the frequency with this so you get random resonating frequencies. The frequencies are actually pitch quantized here to a scale. You can synchronize or rhythmically quantize here also the sound coming in with the recorder. So you basically record into a buffer and then you delay the buffer playback until something happens in the beat grid. So you can do so much stuff here, and it's just a few modules, right? And we also use here the voice stacking things. We have 6 voices, so this is basically 6 times on different layers with different values on each layer, different random resonating frequencies, you know, different delays and so on. It's so easy and it's so fun to play around with this. And I just bring in here some kind of Dirac signal, which is very simple, but you can also just use some field recordings with some clicks and pops in there, or maybe use your microphone as an input, or I don't know, everything you can imagine, maybe rain sounds, and then just layer it in, use the mix knob here and put it on top and make it more musical in a way. So in my opinion, the grid is still the king for this, and it's one of the main reasons why you maybe want to buy Bitwig Studio, in my opinion. And sadly, the grid wasn't really extended in a certain way in the last few years. Sure, there are some new modules here and there over the years, and maybe the node grid was new, but it's kind of the same thing for a few years now, and I just can't imagine how big this will become when they finally extend the grid in certain ways. Anyway, that's it for this video. Maybe you want to try out this on the weekend. I think it's a great party trick. It's fun to do, and you can feed all kinds of different audio signals into the grid and you get different outcomes. Okay, maybe I put this here also in the GitHub if you don't want to replicate this, if you just want to download this, of course, then you can do this for free. Leave a like, leave a subscription. See you next day, in the next video. Bye.